probably not. I was talking to other people. So, no, probably not, but I'll let you know later. No, I can't. I think I did. So, no. Two from the giant, so I think that. Harper. Okay, well, let me run. Bye. You doing okay?
Yeah, how are you?
Okay. Hanging in. Hanging in, hanging in, hanging in.
The financial year is over in March.
Sorry.
Our financial year over in March or
For the grant,
like financial year.
for the university,
Financial year.
it's actually September. The October 1 and September 30th is committing these fiscal years. The grant that we're under is April 1 and March 31. Do I?
You want to be thinking about?
Okay. Yeah. Study.
Only from Cindy. Get those. Oh, you're welcome to, you're such a good guy. This is good.
So do you feel like I'm not?
Yes, I feel like I'm actually so about it. Prima donna. All right, well, I guess what we're going to do after this, we're going to walk to the Alabama, Oregon side. Oh, do you remember my mother?
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, so he never had a chance to stop by.
He had a, he was a book hospital and he was picking up some stuff.
That thing looks heavy. Your mom made that?
So she's so appreciative. Make sure you just don't, my kids is going still. This is from India.
You know what's impressive about all this is your mom has the manual to exterior there. You know, like most people say, hey, my parents even, I mean, they're arthritis in their fingers and stuff.
So I treated my sister after her mother was fine. She gets good stuff.
She knows this. Yeah, huge TV.
Because usually we had something else.
Last year you did everything on it, as they come back, they're on a.
What do you get, 96?
Well, I was trying to look at yeah, I mean, I can't tell if it's a 65 or a 90. I don't know what number I should be looking at.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's. I'll text something if no one else is in here. We've always done that though, like if you print it. The industry asked us to do that, and they would pay like the $5 or $12 for it. Yeah.
It's his responsibility to get it. She couldn't.
Is this new to you?
It is, well, it was here the last time, and I still find it so pretty.
Well, it's better than that
It is.
thing they have
It is.
there.
It is. It's like the poor guy who was there. It's gone now. I'm sure he was sad. He was Dr. Pittman.
Oh, so he
They can't rehang them somewhere else.
Probably.
So you feel as if we're dishonoring him.
I know. I mean, what were we thinking?
So this isn't your doing then?
No. Big clubs. They actually have speakers, and I mean, look how much they've done. I mean.
Yeah, our chair's library has sort of not an exact same setup, but the same thing with the microphone out the top, and this is exactly how it's set up with a TV, and then there's for video conferencing.
Yep.
So we did our first, with various sites in that room, and not recognizing that we should have been sitting at the table.
Because we didn't really want our faces.
Right, no, I get that,
But the comment was is the audio wasn't captured well.
I think they're still working on it, whoever installed it, they're still playing.
Okay, yeah,
It's not
so,
working right, I mean, it wasn't the quality they wanted, I know after the first time we did it I guess it was last week, and, anyhow.
do you record these and are they viewable?
They do record them,
And are they accessible later?
I think so,
Okay, is this the same thing like with the YouTube where you go?
I think so.
Okay, all right. I'm not gonna ask questions then.
Yeah, you know, that's right, watch what you say. This is recorded.
Should probably be a disclaimer though.
Probably should tell people.
Yeah.
I kind of don't tell them that. But they shouldn't be, I don't think that the faces of the audience are recorded. I think it's just the speaker and the voice and the slides. I hope. I mean, I don't think they're showing, I don't think they're showing you guys. Otherwise, we would need a disclaimer, right? I mean, I'm thinking.
Well, I don't know, maybe. It might be part of your terms of employment, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I can't even remember what I agreed to way back when. I know getting kids into school systems now, you have to sign all these waivers and privacy things. I mean, it's gotten really complex.
That's crazy.
I argued with the lady at the school system. So they're going to create email addresses and login access for my child for these programs that they use. And I said, well, what information are you going to be providing to this site on his behalf? Like, I would rather be the person who creates it.
Or you get it and then you let him see it.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, or I just create it and I'll give you the password and stuff, but I want to have ownership of it. That's not, I don't know.
Well, I just heard today of a friend who's some learning disabilities, so testing is a big deal. But testing is a big deal anyway. And parents, you have to give their permission, written permission for any testing, which didn't happen in my day.
So,
At all, I'm old, so, my kids' day.
yeah.
So again, getting parents to must consent to testing. Make it so complicated. Part of it's the electronic nature of everything, because it's so public that without, when it's just a piece of paper, it's not. We'll let your confidentiality is pretty likely to be.
Well, the biggest fight I've had with the whole school system is the social security numbers.
Are they using one?
Well, no, there is so I found in the state's Board of Education, like they have to give you the opportunity to, you don't have to have it for terms of admission to the public school system, but they have to provide like another number, provide you with another number. You should look at it, it's hilarious because various parts of the state have different ways of doing it, and it's all outlined in their manual. I just think it's hilarious that there's, they can't just auto-generate some number and then start assigning kids to them.
Well, we kind of do that all the time in research, in the hospital, medical records. And
Yeah,
you
no,
have
but
alternate numbers.
Yeah, they have like this defined process of how kids in Northeast Alabama will get done, kids in the western part of Alabama will be done.
But because there wasn't a social security number, that is one of the father who took his kid. When he was 5 years old, that's on the news now. That's how he was called. That's how the father was called.
That's how
Kidnapping.
his social
Because
security
his child.
His child
His
trying to apply to college.
That's right.
But now the
Oh, so I
social
didn't hear that's how they connected the two lines there. Wow. Wow.
I'm looking at it more at the other end, because I don't want my children's credits to be.
Yeah, or at least why can't it just be the last 5 anyway?
Yeah.
Why can't we just show it to you and you say there is one and then you get them?
So I was in college at the time when all that stuff was changing. I remember I think it was around my junior year. Professors come in and just throw the test out on the middle of the floor and say, come find yours. And then it went to, all right, now you have to give me 3 numbers and,
I'll give you.
yeah, it was like, you have to create, or I don't know, they did some way of randomly doing it in each class, but it's like now I can't just throw them out and just, you go snag them anymore.
Because you might see somebody else's paper.
Yes.
Well,
So
so
watch
I just
that.
won't give people's names out, like part of little procedures. When people lose weight, they'll say, oh, Jane, you lost 5 pounds. Congratulations, you cannot say someone's name.
I mean, you can only say, like, if you don't use their name, you could say that without using their name.
Yeah, but usually there's a list, so the leader won't know. It's a Bali in the meeting that I attended, 6 months ago. The people there said, you may use our names. I said, well, I hope there's not someone watching me, but okay. Oh, gracious.
So this is recording right now, right?
No, hope not.
Well, maybe I'll ask later, but I just want to know Encore.
Well,
Is that going to get
word
discussed?
has it that they're going to be moving forward quickly. Now that they've hired a new the CTAO director, administrative director, and that's the primary responsibility of the position, as I understand it. It can always change, and I can always get misinformation.
I guess I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but it ties into your presentation a little bit, so that's what I was.
It does. It does, especially, yeah, because it's, yep, it does. It's, yeah.
So that would be my question is it going to get the Greek validation of the system? Okay.
It's supposed to be
So that's
totally,
part of-
and I would tell you also, because one of the things many people don't use Encore for data, but some people do. And if you're in a cancer center, you can use it for data. So apparently again, you know the hoops you have to jump through for SOPH, and they insist they're 21 CFR compliant, and that's their biggest concern. So the whole thing with Encore is it 21 CFR compliant? And they say yes. Well, if you look, and that's fine, but it's about confidentiality and securities attached to it. So the word is yes, it is compliant.
Well,
And that's really what these regulations are sort
so
of.
not to say that that's what we're trying to do, I don't want to do that impression. This is all hypothetical.
Have you said about a red cap? Because you can't do doing complex forms in Encore is it's not an easy thing. We've been trying to get one investigator's protocol up to that, and it's pretty cumbersome. So red cap is probably a better choice.
But it's not compliant with this. So because it doesn't have a data, what is it? It doesn't have a way of tracking the data, like a data.
Yeah. A trail.
Yes.
Yeah, the audit.
Yeah.
Which doesn't the
Red cap. Yes.
Interesting.
So
I don't use red cap. I just
yeah.
hear about it.
Yeah, that's why it can't be used for FDA studies. But what I will say is, I went on to Forte Systems to try and figure out, like, is this compliant? Now, their website says that it is, but they don't do the validation for you. So, because it depends on what the enterprise contracts are.
Right.
And what I've come to find is that each institution validates it and puts a certificate online for their entity. So I think I found Kentucky's and maybe like Utah's or something, but I mean, it's left up to each institution to do that testing.
So then you need a data manager and or a statistician to do that.
Yeah, and that's what Gary Cutter told us, it's a $10,000 venture, so.
Yeah, interesting. Well, guys, it's after 12:30, and since there's so few of you, I didn't print all this out. This is really the E6 Good Clinical Practices with it redlined, so you can actually see where the changes are. And it isn't redlined. If you look on the left column, there's a bar, and it also the changes say addendum. And anyhow, it's a good resource to have. And more paper to play with. You can get it on the internet. That's where I downloaded it from. I wanted to give everybody the address, but my computer was off. So let me start from the beginning. Thank you all for being here. This is our normal Thursday, and this is the Thursday when we usually do journal club. So for that reason, it's supposed to be casual, which means you guys have to be involved, and you have to provide comments. So the one thing I'm going to do is I go through the changes, trying to figure out what's the impact to us as researchers. That's an important thing for us to think about. It's interesting to me because I think in many ways what ICH-GCPs is really doing is they're trying to catch up with what the Code of Federal, what we're doing in the U.S. Like 21 CFR 11 has never been addressed in the Code of the ICH-GCPs. So you'll see segments of that stuck in here. So Since I know most of you, I'm not even going to introduce myself because I know you. So what I'm going to talk about, all right, maybe, okay. There has to be a way, let's see. Let's go, this is not a Mac. Sorry, that's going to get tedious if I have to do that, but let's see where we go. So what I'm going to talk about is why are these changes being implemented, what are the changes, and also to figure out how do they implement, or how do they affect our implementation of research, practice of research. This is very lengthy, so what you're going to find from your slides is that it's everything. I've done a lot of cutting and pasting from the regulation, and just so we could see it together. So this is pretty wordy, but really all it is saying is, again, what we're doing is ICH-GCP is amending the long-standing ICH-GCPs, which I think were last amended in 2002, just so you know that that's when I looked that up, and that was the date. The implementation is supposed to go into effect in the fall, so it really isn't in effect yet. The last comments were supposed to have been submitted in early February, and so they seem to be moving forward with these. There may be some changes. I mean, these don't consider these a hard and fast, but they're really close to probably what's going to be implemented. Again, as we talk about with GCPs, the whole point of this is to increase the safety to the subjects and increase the collection and the rigor with which we collect data. So nothing new, nothing very different, but just the world evolves. Research changes, the world changes. We've often talked about that in this room, that regulations get implemented because of mistakes that are made. So, something that was true in 2002 probably does need to be amended a bit for 2016. So as you can see, this is kind of an important slide, the ICH-GCP guideline integrated, they call it the integrated addendum. So that's kind of the verbiage they've used. Addendum is the big phrase, the significant word that will help you identify what's been changed in the ICH-GCPs. Again, these are standards that have been agreed to by the EU, Japan, US, Canada, and Switzerland. So again, they've been passing through all these hands to assure that they meet the standards and meet the needs of our current population and current research practices. So when you look at these slides, I'm going to have what the change actually is, and then how does it impact us. So this is an interesting one. This is one that we have been doing for about the NIH's for our NIH-funded studies through DMID. We have had to do this for years, for about 5 years. So it's not a brand new practice, but it's now a brand new requirement. And I brought what we have. Everybody needs one of these. We're going to see if we can get a buttload of them. So whenever, because what you know what a source document is. That's the original first place you collect data, sign and date it. That's original. You've got the wet signature, or the original place it's been. If you have a system whereby you enter that data into a database, then your name is in the background that you entered that data in. If that happens to be your source, I mean, that does happen. If you make a copy of that document that was your original source, if you make a copy or a printout of something you entered in the database, you need to document that it's a certified copy because it isn't the original. It isn't the original document. So I'll pass this around. It makes it easy. You just stamp this on your page if you want, and then so you don't have to write it and just sign and date it. Again, simple thing, but it's about validating that it is an exact copy of what the original was. And if, honestly, I think we've talked about it. If I buy a bunch of them, we'll sell them at cost. We're not in it to make money, but maybe that's the best way. And then if we buy 10,000 of them or something, 2,000, something, then you guys can buy it. We'll let you know if we do that. I think we're going to do it, and I just have to convince people they have to spend the money to do it. But it's a small thing compared to what we spend on other stuff. But it's important. And even if it isn't implemented, it's important. It's a good practice to have. Interesting, though, that it was put in the ICH-GCPs. We thought it was important, but not that important. Monitoring is a big component of some of the changes that you'll see throughout the ICH-GCP. And one of the things that I think to be true is a lot of this we're already doing. You'll just see that one of the things they're doing, they're simply documenting the practices that we probably all have. Monitoring plan, that is brand new. Well,
You know, I've not been involved in a study where there wasn't a monitoring plan. It just wasn't dictated. It wasn't written down as a requirement. So now it's written as a requirement. But then I think about, well, how does that affect us? You know, I think if you are, it is something you should ask for. I don't think there's any restriction, I've never heard of one, where you couldn't ask for a copy of the monitor plan. Does anybody do that? Do y'all get copies of those? We get them. So, Frida?
So, Penny, does it matter, you know, because sometimes that language is included in the contract,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but that's just the frequency. So what you're saying is their actual plan.
Because we use monitor plans where you describe, you know, what of the regulatory documents are you going to look at? What CRFs are you going to look at? Are you going to look at all of them? Because again, keeping in mind we're going to go to risk-based monitoring. That's the other part of this, that it's going to be minimized. So if they put that all in the contract, then that would be fine. But usually the monitor plan is with the monitor and the site. You know, they kind of. So again, it's. It doesn't say what the format should be, but you know our monitor plans are about 6 pages long, and they talk about the frequency and the possibility of phone monitoring, what data has to be. You know, every subject who has an SAE. I'm just giving you some examples. Every subject with an SAE has to be 100% monitored in one study, and then maybe only 50% of the other subjects. If they didn't have an SAE, then maybe we'll monitor them or not. But that's the sort of thing that would be in the monitor plan. Because I think what's going to be happening is we're moving away from the 100% monitoring, and so they realize that you're going to have to document why you're doing what you're doing. So requiring such a plan is a good idea. If anybody wants examples of monitor plans, we have them if you need to build one, but I mean, we don't always have, you know, we use what we use. There are many examples around the world, so, you know, there may be others out there as well. So as you'll see, when I did this, this is a direct quote from the original. If I have a parenthesis around it, just so you can see the flow. So this was already there, but then they added this statement. So this was again about the monitor report. You all get your monitors probably send you a report. So this whole section just is, you know, again, what the monitors are going to be expected to do. They probably are already doing it, but now it's in writing that it's a requirement. When we talk about risk-based monitoring, you know, we're talking about minimizing monitoring. And one of the things that they're looking at, and this is where SOPH gets in the way, and they understand this. Years ago, when we started working with the Department of, the Division of Preventive Medicine, and who was it? It was Dale Williams was in charge, and we were just starting to work with them to work together. And he was talking about monitoring, but he was talking about, and it wasn't the monitoring we as clinical research coordinators and managers think about, it was monitoring from the database. Monitoring the data from the database, and it's sort of a terminology we as coordinators don't think about. So what they're saying here is we move toward risk-based monitoring and more electronic databases that are well structured. Sites can be monitored just from the database. So that's what this is saying. I find it complex, and as we all know, what goes on at the site may not be reflected in what's in the database, but there are certain, I mean, if you think about monitoring from a database, you have a child who you're going to see for every week for 6 months, and they get weighed every time, and they weigh 30 kilograms, 30 kilograms, 3,000 kilograms, 30 kilograms, 30 kilograms. Well, the database could identify that. So that's how a database could monitor data. Anyhow, so what this whole effort is the monitor report might also come from the data management group. So that's what this is sort of saying. So you may see not only monitor reports from monitors, but as we minimize our monitoring, the centralized monitoring can take place from that perspective as well. We also have monitors who are making phone calls now as opposed to coming. They want you to send to them, fax them your source docs. It doesn't relieve any of your work. That's what I believe to be true. You send them all their source docs, and then they compare it to the database, and that's another way to make some centralized monitoring. Again, it's more remote monitoring than centralized. So again, as impact, you might see additional reports.
Validation of computerized systems. You know, I'm not going to read through this, but really this is all about 21 CFR 11, if any of you are familiar with that. It's all about managing and controlling electronic data, assuring its integrity, assuring it's not going to fall apart, that it has all the backups it needs, that it's a validated system. Again, ICH-GCPs have never addressed it. We certainly have in the U.S. with 21 CFR 11, but it was not in the ICH-GCP. So the expectation is to put it there. There's a section called Principles of ICH-GCP, and I think this is the one that has just 13 principles is what has traditionally been in this section. They're adding one principle. This principle applies to all records, paper or electronic, referenced in this guideline. You know, again, if you've looked at all 13 of them, I guess it's under, if you have a hard copy, it's under section 210. This is just added. Again, I think what they're looking at is now we have so much more electronic. We've always kept up with our papers. We know that ICH-GCPs apply to all the paper we have, so now they're simply stating it also applies to your electronic. Not a big deal, but again, we always have to cover the basis here. This I thought was interesting. In 4.2, it says that's a section of your of the ICH-GCP that talks about adequate resources. And so what they have done is they've added 4.2.5, and really it's a reflection of the 1572. There is really nothing there that isn't in, but they've never addressed the 1572 in the ICH-GCP. So now they're sort of stating what we, you know, as we see the principles that we see in the 1572. 4.2.6 is brand new also, and just emphasis on training and making sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do. That site signature log where you write a person's name down and you have documentation they've been trained on whatever task they're doing. Again, raising the profile of everything we do and putting more emphasis on it. Not anything we haven't been doing, because I do think everyone does, you know, make sure that everybody's trained on the study, but now it becomes a regulation, it becomes a guideline. Records and reports. This is, again, everything we know about, I mean, how many of us, if you look at that second sentence down, source data should be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. It's Alcoa. It's everything we've talked about for what a source document should be. Not new information, it's just simply now in the guidelines. And this is what we tell everybody about, you know, source documents. This is the true definition of a source document. One of the big changes that's something many of us have been doing, and we've sort of been trying to promote it, is quality management plans. If you look at when we talked a couple weeks ago about risk-based monitoring, the whole point of risk-based monitoring is to minimize the external monitor, the independent monitor's time spent at your site. Well, how are they doing that? They're mandating that you have a quality management plan. If anybody needs any tools, we build them all the time for our NIH-funded studies because we're required to. So you have a plan, you talk about how frequently you're going to review internally your own regulatory documents, how frequently you will review your SAEs, completion of documentation, you know, how often will you make sure people are trained. It's really a plan on how you will maintain quality at your site. And then there are forms that go with it. And then annually you're supposed to do a report that says, yes, we did everything we said we would do. We reviewed our, you know, regulatory documents twice a year. We, you know, addressed, we looked at the SAEs 3 times a year. We made sure everything was reported. It's QCing yourself is all it is. And that's really, so that's what this whole 5.0, it's a big section, that's a big addition to the ICH-GCP, but again, it's not anything many of us don't do. I mean, I think many times, to me, the quality management plan is a formalized way of doing what we already do. I mean, everybody probably makes a pass at their consent forms, at least before the monitor comes, to make sure all the signatures are there. Or after, you maybe have a standard where after every visit and you're doing your final check of everything, you double check the signatures on the consent form. You do it because it's what you do for good practice, but it's never not formalized. The QCMP is a way of formalizing it to say, yes, we're going to do it this frequently, yes, this is what we'll do, and this is what our corrective action will be if we don't do it correctly. Not, again, not terribly unique. Again, I won't read through all of this, but it's all, again, goes back to being related to the risk-based monitoring and trying to minimize procedures. If we had, I think the other thing we've talked about is how we're trying to raise the standard at UAB and to put us in a position where we are visibly have standards in place that give us a leg up of other institutions. If we had a mandate, I'm not saying we should because I don't really think we should, but if we had a mandate that everybody had to have a quality management plan, then when we're marketing UAB, we can say we do quality management plans across the board and everybody does them. That would be a big star in our cap if we did that. Again, so keep in mind as we talk about changes, that is really where we're going with everything right now. It's how do we create standards for institutions, academic institutions? What are the standards we're going to create to show that we don't have to submit a CV and a facilities description to every institution, every pharmaceutical company that we apply to? How can we streamline some of this activity that we do by showing what kind of an institution we are and what standards we have in place so that people don't have to question it and we don't have to submit 5,000 documents 5,000 times, because that so often happens when we are doing research. These are additional items, again, all under the the quality management plans. Again, I'm not going to read through all these, but they're just critical pieces that would be part of a management plan. What are your critical processes that you're going to be involved in? How are you going to identify your data? And what's the process? You would describe all of that within the content of the quality management plan. How do you identify risk? How do you measure risk? And then, what are you going to do about it? Risk evaluation. This is something that they want to move us toward. Again, it's how do we, by putting these things in place, we identify the quality of work we do. It raises the quality. Again, I'm not going to read through this because I know you all can do that yourselves. So again, it talks about communication and risk review. I think more is going to be coming out about this. I'm sure there are going to be some courses based on, it's more extensive than what we've been taught in the past. But again, it's going to be coming down the road. It's already here. We're already doing it in different venues, but it's going to be across the board. Pharma is going to expect us to have them. I don't know, has anybody had pharmaceutical companies who've asked for quality management plans yet? They eventually will. If these are adopted, it's going to be something that's going to be required. And they really aren't that cumbersome. I just want to reiterate, it doesn't, you are already doing it. I would bet 90% of you are doing it, if not on 90% of your projects. You're double checking yourself. And just think about it, before the monitor comes, don't you go through everything to make sure you're ready for that monitor? That's a QC effort. So it's, again, formalizing what you're already doing. This, I thought, to me, this was an interesting statement, that it even needed to be added. If you look at the added, it's all about contract research organizations. And it simply says a sponsor should ensure oversight of any trial-related duties and functions carried out on its behalf. I guess I thought that was already being done. It's kind of like, why would you even need to add that? But I guess it goes back to the statement about investigators having responsibility. When I talked about that phrase, it was very much like the 1572. We are so used to knowing we have responsibility and that we know what the sponsor's responsibility is. And so whether it's stated or not in the ICH-GCPs has never been an issue for us. But clearly it's stated now. And again, I think we all assumed that was going on. At least I did. This one is related to any trial-related duties and functions that are transferred to and assumed by a CRO should be specified in writing. That's already in the ICH-GCP. And again, just that the sponsor should document approval of any subcontracting of trial-related duties. I don't know. It seems to me it's not even a rewording. They've added it. Again, seems already to be being done. I don't think that sponsors and monitors are not doing it. Management of data handling and record keeping. This is where we get into the electronic. The 21 CRF mirror. It's very much like it. It just talks about how do we maintain completeness, accuracy, reliability, and consistency of the data, especially when it's in an electronic format. I would never want to be and then having SOPs for these systems, very important. And actually, I'm going to have to step back. That was already in there. What is new, I just lied to you all. This was there, but what we're expanding is still related to the 21 CFR 11. It should cover the system setup and SOPs. We work with SOPH, and they build databases for us. And they have SOPs out the wazoo. We couldn't get any study started until they had all of their SOPs written. That was in compliance with the 21 CFR 11, so now it's being stated here. So nothing really unusual. This was also added, ensuring the integrity of the data, including any data that describe the content, and structure of the data has strong integrity. It's important when making changes to the computerized system. Again, here we are back to computers. In 2002, we weren't using computers very much, so there was no need to have any of this in the Code of Federal Regulations. Back to, again, as you can see, it sort of jumps around in the ICH-GCP. We're back to monitoring, the extent and nature of monitoring. I believe this is a whole new section. It's everything we're already doing. The sponsor does develop a systematic, prioritized, risk-based approach to monitoring. The key here is they're putting in the word risk-based. So the days of 100% monitoring are going to be going by the wayside. We're going to be seeing, as we've said before, different ways of doing it. Now that we have it in a regulation, it gives us the sponsors freedom, I think, and permission and direction to do such things. A combination of on-site and centralized monitoring activities may be appropriate. Again, and there's justification, just like when you're writing a protocol, you have to have justification for how you're doing your monitoring. I think what's going to happen is statisticians are going to get more involved in designing monitoring plans, because they're going to look at the data, they're going to look at what the primary endpoints are, what are the secondary endpoints, which ones are critical, how much of each of those endpoints do we need to monitor to assure that statistically we can assure we have good data. Again, we're really in many ways moving toward, again, a statistically based and focused research activity. Then another statement about the monitoring report. Nothing, to me, there was nothing here that was unusual. It's everything that we see from monitors. Clearly they have a plan, clearly they do reports, they have timelines, they're rigorous about them, and they provide oversight to the site. Additional information on monitoring plan, again emphasizing the risk-based monitoring. A lot of words to say what we've already kind of said. There's a section on non-compliance near the end of in section 5.20. There's a section on non-compliance. 5.20.1 was already there. I dropped some phrases in the middle just so you could see. It was too lengthy to write out. Adding in, and it seems almost unnecessary, but when significant non-compliance is discovered, the sponsor should perform a root cause analysis and implement appropriate corrective action and preventive action. I think that's what we do. If we have a problem, we figure out how to fix it, and so that it doesn't happen again. I think we've all probably gotten better at that, just as a good means of practice, a good practice. If you think about your protocol deviations, looking at those on a regular basis to see if you have patterns that you're screwing up somewhere. Missed visits, just anything that would, any problem that occurs, incorrectly enrolled subjects. You're going to not just solve that problem, but you need to figure out why it happened. Again, anybody who runs a business, anybody who's trying to do anything should always look at their problems and figure out what the root cause was and then come up with a plan. But now we're stating it in the ICH-GCPs. In the section on essential documents, there really were no changes. We're still collecting and reviewing all the same essential documents. Nothing new. in the document collection, this is a phrase, these two paragraphs were added. And the one thing, I don't know that I can even point out anything here that's unique, except that the storage system, irrespective of media used, should provide for document identification, search, and retrieval even after the study is closed. I think there's some emphasis here on after the study is over, because the Section 8 talks about all the regulatory documents you collect before, during, and at the end of the study. So again, storage, we think about long-term. This is one of our biggest problems, and identifying what we can save as we think about all the 1572s you collect, all the CDs. Do we always have to save them as hard copies? Can we save them as electronic copies? And that's great. Well, okay, now they're electronic. How are it used to be you could just put all your documents in a box and send them over to the warehouse and pray that nothing ever happened to them. And you'll forget they're there, and you'll be reminded someday when you want to move the warehouse, because that's happened to us. But electronic, it becomes more complex. Yes, you can save them. Yes, that's less space, but where are they going to be? How are they backed up? Who has access? It just adds to the complexity. So the whole point of this is to address it. It's our fate to be in this electronic age. It's not even electronic, it's computer age, I think. So the changes, as you can see, really aren't that great, but it depends how you look at them. I think in many ways we're doing many of them. Some of the things we're doing we need to get a little bit more systematic about. The monitoring, it's hard to say how that's going to impact us. I think we have challenges with databases and using those for monitoring, because to build a good database, you have to have a good clinician involved, or that database is not going to work well. So it's a real challenge to do that, because those of us who are clinical and work in that world, most of us don't know squat about databases, but we're having to learn the language so we can help build them rigorously so that they're useful to us and that they contain the data that's needed. Again, nothing really, these are just a summary of what we've talked about. Everything I think you're all doing, but just to know that this is going to be happening, and I think that there will be more training on quality management plans. I think that's going to be needed, and also on the risk-based monitoring. What's that going to mean to us, and how will that I can only hope it decreases the amount of work we do. Now, as much as it decreases, you're going to be spending more time doing rigorous quality management, but we've got to figure out a way to not let that overtake us, because I do think you're already doing your quality management, just not in a regular way. You're doing it on the side, double checking yourselves. So what questions do you all have? Did anything jump out at anybody about how unacceptable it was? We don't have much choice. So the expectation, as I said, is August 2016 is what I heard, that it will be implemented. So right now they're not implemented, they're not finalized, but that's the goal right now, to look at that for fall. So it'll be interesting to see if they do come through with it.
So is that to align with maybe the changes in the common rule as well, or?
Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. That would be interesting. Do it all at once.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Is anybody using quality management plans? They really aren't cumbersome. I mean, I think they also give you assurance. I mean, because the thing is, if you have a quality management plan, the 2 weeks before the monitor comes, you really don't have to do anything. You already know that your data is in good shape. The time you spent making sure your reg docs are rigorous, your binder is in good shape, that all your data is complete. You have your notes to file to explain when there are when there's missing data, or when something has happened. But you're going to have everything in order, so that when the monitor comes, those 2 days that you might have spent preparing, you're not going to have to do, because you're already there. So I think it spreads out, and hopefully you'll be more comfortable with how you feel about the studies you're conducting. That's the theory anyway. It's still work. Well, everyone, if anybody, I'm trying to think what else I might ask you. But I think that's it. It's pretty straightforward. I think you have tools, and as we hear about its implementation, if we think that it's important to develop some classes on quality management plans, we will. We get more information. I don't think you'll find them hard. I mean, it's just pretty easy stuff. But. Yes, ma'am.
I have found that working with quality management plans, usually the people who have the final approval want to make sure they're very open-ended. And they're not specific. This is just.
I hear an experience you've had.
And so even when they're revised, the people who have the final say don't want to be pigeonholed into something. So there may be a plan, and that plan can be shared.
Right.
But the plan itself, you know, like if you were to say something, I guess a good example is the site may be visited within 3 years.
Right. So the monitor will go out in 3 years.
I mean, but everything is just very, it's just not right.
The thing, so clearly what they really want, as I said earlier, statisticians and biostatisticians to get more involved and to figure out how frequently should they go. I mean, that's where we're moving toward. I mean, if anybody has children, they probably should become statisticians because I think they're going to have lots of work to do. But it shouldn't be at the, don't quote me, and I'm probably being recorded, but I wonder sometimes if the PI is the one who should be making those decisions. I almost think it should be somebody who's looking at the numbers, who's looking at the frequency of what occurs in a standard study, what are the number of deviations you tend to have. I mean, that's the other thing that goes into this algorithm with monitoring. If you have a site that has a lot of deviations, they're going to put into their database, they're going to monitor you more. So it can't be, it's not one size fits all. It's what are the needs of each site. So, yeah, it's hard when you have such open-ended, it needs to be specific. And maybe that's one of the reasons you're emphasizing the monitor plan. Because, again, if you build a tool that you're going to mandate now, and we want it more rigorous, then that sort of thing maybe won't happen as much as the expectation. Does that make sense, Liz?
And maybe sharing the new guideline.
Yes, with the right people. Thank you all for coming. I won't keep you. You're welcome to hang around and talk if you like, but thank you for being here. Does anybody want a copy of the CFR 11? I think some of you didn't. Printed in Marcus Martin, so you can see over on the left is one, see that when he has a big bar. So you can mark it down. Thank you. I am good. You're good. And I call it, I'm here with you. Oh, good. Good. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's easy for her.
I heard your name. I had this come out like I noticed that somebody else yeah.
We have
I would love it. Absolutely. So,
Do you even know?
Yeah, some part, writing and cursing.
Yeah, she's got all that, so, you know, she's talking. Yes, absolutely. I was sort of expecting you all to do that, to divide it up. I mean, I thought getting all of your.
You're representing the little research part. So how long did you say that?
So I'm very good at 2013.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the contract.
You can let me know someday.
So I
Yeah, so just, there's a bio over there.
you're
very welcome.
We don't because in.
Ever see me over
You will get
there?
a
It's because
Excel
she's
spreadsheet
over there
file
for some
and
reason,
something
and
else.
I'm probably looking at what I'm doing.
I
I actually helped with
So it's
all
already
doctors
pretty
on the
stable.
board, so
what they want.
They've got me stuck on page 4 right now just because it's not related to the dance.
Voice.
Yeah.
We don't have that.
So, how does Gary help you guys with
See, I
your
did the
data?
meeting.
Well,
Yes,
there you go.
I mean,
So we
we
were
were
on
on
cheat sheet about that. And
They were
to
good.
be honest, I've, they look at our data periodically, so we can, monthly reports, you guys have monthly
Yep.
reports, and they're pretty good at going through and saying, hey, we see these discrepancies. We see these problems, and they highlight it in yellow at the bottom.
They have never shared that with us.
Holy crap, it is so nice.
So we get about 70, 80 pages worth of
Yes,
stuff.
but nothing
But
else.
nothing's highlighted,
Oh my
nothing's
gosh,
highlighted.
no, they take the time to, I'll send you copies. You can see how they'll send it to us and they'll highlight it and they'll say, this might be an issue. Can you look into this? It's highlighted, the box is highlighted in yellow, usually a footnote.
I want to tell you, we get lists of things. So we may get the AEs and someone looks at it, then I know that this AE has different onset dates without resolution dates. So it is up to me to look at it
Right.
to do that. But there is nothing that's fine-tuned in anything we have. Boy, just said, I really just think all Gary talks about is he likes to look at all the supervised. Because in his mind, that's part of its indication of how poorly the sites are doing. I would say that that's just one, see, our report.
And that's what I'm
has-
trying to figure out, is like, what are you guys getting that's a little bit different?
I'll send you a copy of it, where you can see how they identify issues. But it's the complete data set. Well, I mean, again, it's a nice report. I guess it doesn't have all the data, but it has it has everything.
But you know what nobody has said is, our reports are based on what the PIs want. You know what happens, I think when a study gets started, PIs don't want to pay one.
Yes.
And so,
See, they don't even talk to the PI. Say, we built it, I built it with them.
no, that's not something they were talking to us about. Like, they didn't even want, they don't talk to us about what would make a good DSMB report.
No. We asked them to generate tables so we could see if the DSMB wanted to use
We're
them.
not allowed to look at the tables. The only
Well, I
time-
mean, so we're looking at, so to start with, we wanted blank table, I want some blank tables, and
We don't
this is what we think the DSMB should review. This is the design of the blank tables. They create it, and then they generate it, and it's a blinded study, certainly we don't see it. It just goes to the blinded data. We often see, but we see the data.
We get,
It's
the
blinded.
only tables we have seen is because one of the co-investigators for our proposed last study said, I think to look at the tables. I haven't had a chance to look at them, but that is the only time, we're talking about shells, have been shared with us because we can't look at them. We're
You know
doing
what?
what the DSMB wants us to do. And you know what, having worked with different people, sometimes you don't know what you
Well, so what we do, so we have a DSMB meeting coming up, and we remind Chi-Chi, who does insurance with Gary, and they've already approved the tables of the DSMB, and then she goes to write the report, and she will provide us a blinded data, so that then there'll also be an unblinded one, but we don't get to see it. But David, the PI, and I will look at it to see if we see anything that looks amiss. Like, we've looked at it before it's gone to the DSMB, because we work with them, and we say, okay, we think the site has submitted 2 deviations or 2 adverse events that are exactly the same. We need to fix that. We fix it before it goes to the DSMB.
Now, when
And-
we
but
worked
we
with
look at it
preventive
in
medicine, I was able to do that. And, you know, you find out things where they put like grade 4, grade 5
Yeah,
hemoglobin
yeah.
that was transferred.
Yeah.
No, we don't do anything. This is the magic of Coretta. It's the magic of Coretta and Gary.
That is so different. No wonder you guys are so
So there's just,
frustrated.
you know what, there's
Because
just a
that's
lot
so-
of secrets, and they don't need to be. Like, if I'm aware that something doesn't, actually, one of my best skills is if someone tells me by email, Liz, we're behind and this is what's going on with the subject,
Right.
which is always such a sin, because by the time they do data entry, it's not the same. So then I have to say, I understand how the relationship and things, but that's not what you talk about here. And I'll copy paste the email,
Right.
and this is one of the biggest problems with delayed data entry, and let's use an unscheduled
Since
form.
I'm still recording. So.
Anyway,
I don't think so.
But anyway, I was just, that is very interesting to me, that, I would
Well, it is
love-
to me too.
I mean,
I
it's
can't believe how
wonderful.
different it is because they're both under Gary, Coretta and,
Oh. But you do, I think you have a different,
they're such lovely people.
yeah, I mean, you have,
Gotcha.
you know,
I don't turn it off.
yeah.
We will delete this thing.
That'd be fine.
But I mean, I think you have a different person, a program manager for it. And I think we're getting, I mean, I really think we're getting all the skill sets that the person we use works with.
Yeah,
You know,
I think we're getting the best we can get with the effort that's allowed for her to give to us.
Right, and her knowledge base.
It's,
You know, you have to have
her time is
someone.
split, not for just our projects, but with other projects. So we don't, she isn't devoted to just our consortium.
Right.
She's responsible for other entities as well.
And she doesn't have the type of mentoring, you know, I think everybody needs somebody to help mentor them and, you know, and talk about classes, you know, because sometimes the way you thought of things last week, I mean, you've always been a good buddy for me, you know, I may think this is the right way to do it. And then someone opens up my paradigm and I'll think, oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's another way of looking at
Right.
it, right there, agreed, we all do
So
that.
I think that's been part of our problem with our consortium group in terms of our data system and even our steering committee, we're kind of tied in. So looking at that would be helpful to us, just because.
But, so I like what you're saying about the quality management plans, but it's one of those things where you can sort of trip yourself up because it's, you know, it's what you don't know, you don't know.
I know.
So I wondered if it would be, if there was something that's available, or, and it probably is, I haven't, it's the first time I've really thought about doing something like this, but, you know, just maybe a template that provides, like, here are the key
We have
functions.
tools for all of it,
Okay.
I'll send them to you, I think, yeah, so we have a tool for the plan and then what you look at, I mean, and these are, and there's even a web, I can even give you the address, because DMID is a really nice website that's, I mean, it's open to the public, it's all public information, and on how to do it, I mean, again, it's a place to start, but yeah, it's really, so what we have is, so you've got just basically what your plan is, how, and again, the key indicators, that's KI is the big word, key indicators, what is it you have to look at for this study? And it should be tweaked for each study. Some people try and use one for all of them. And what we do is sometimes if we, as a sponsor, if we have a site that's having trouble, say they continually don't get, I don't know, signatures on an informed consent, I don't think it would be that, but if in the plan they said they were going to review consent forms quarterly, we'll say we ask them to change their quality management plan to review them monthly or before the end of the visit, you know, so that's kind of the corrective action. It's making your quality management plan.
And that would go in as like an addendum to the.
Yeah,
the
you just submit
okay.
it, and the way it's set up, then you have your plan, and then usually there are 3 components, and these are just nice tables and checklists, Word documents, you can modify them to meet your protocol. One is regulatory, one is clinical, and I think one is consenting, so that you make sure you go through and you confirm that not only do you have the consent form, but you have the documentation and the subject data. You
Yeah,
probably do
and
some of
this
that.
is- I
But this
mean-
would be this is a QC, you're gonna go back and double check yourselves. At the end of the year, then you're supposed to then we have a template for what's called a report, an annual report. And that's where you go back and say, hey, we had these problems, we corrected them, and that's all.
And that's, like, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, and this is a lot of work, and that's the other thing I would get back at you, is you say it's not, but it is a lot of work. It's a
Well-
lot of additional work that we are already not, you know, the
Well,
funding.
but people should be doing it all, I mean, we find that people finally realize that if you're a decent coordinator, you're gonna be going back at some point looking at your data. So you're gonna go back and double check yourself. And this is just to formalize and say, okay, I'm gonna pull this form and I'm gonna say I did all this and now it's done. And look at this, I did what I said I would do, which I would have done anyway. I mean, that's what you have to convince people of to
Yeah.
agree.
And you know what I have an opportunity to do is, usually when I find out there's a deficit in their procedure, you know, and you kind of help them say, other sites have used checklists. Looks as if you're doing good on the process.
Right.
You might want to do this.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to document it to me.
Right.
I don't care if it's note to file, memo to file.
Yeah.
I need to say this memo to file
Yeah.
information needs to be places. part of your quality management plan, and I'd like to have access to that. You know,
Right.
just to be able to show the sponsor that you've made
So what happens, our monitors then, see, we as a central unit, we don't ask for this, but when the monitor, and we could, but the monitors, when they go out, they look to see if that annual report has been written. That's all they look at, just to see if they're keeping up with, you know, because if the sponsor cares that you're doing your QCMP stuff, and QCM, they're gonna look at that, but it doesn't.
And I guess that's what I was trying to get at, is like, I would like to create something, yes, for us, but wouldn't it be nice to have a shell to provide the sites and say, this is something you need to develop for your institution.
Right.
And then this is how you're going to be,
Right.
this will be part of your monitoring. Like we're going to come in and make sure that you're adhering to these things.
So I'll get you, and again, ours is, they're all Word documents, so they can be tweaked, but it gives you a format to start with, and you guys can change it to however was comfortable for you, and then share it with the site.
See, we do need an operations center monitoring plan, or quality, excuse me, we need an operations center quality management.
Yeah, and I think what Liz was referring to earlier was we have a quality assurance committee that sort of functions.
Well, they call it a quality management, they call it quality assurance committee, they're like.
And it's to have it's a formalized way of providing oversight, but there's nothing that gives the sites guidance on to, I mean, obviously we're supposed to be adhering to the regulatory standards, but there's nothing that says these are how we do things here in the consortium.
Right.
So it's, for some of our sites, they just sort of take the practices that they learn from COG, some of them, or what they learn from industry, or it's just a mix.
Yeah.
And then some of the investigators have the audacity to say that I sit on an R&B boards and, you know, they know all. So I'm serious, that is some of the,
But we wouldn't be careful, and you know what, what's happened is I'm not really concerned. I've never been concerned about the steering committee's policy, you know, their views of things, the operations center. We need to have, you know, if we get charged with being coordinating center, then we need to have our own. And and it should be more rigorous than the steering committee, because really what we have are things for the steering. It's a steering committee, PAC, it's not.
can you the university pay for this?
Well, I'm gonna ask CCTS to pay. University will pay for it, Richard.
Yeah, just get like 2,000 of them and
That's
just give
what I'm
them,
thinking, I'm gonna see what we can do.
and give them away.
Yeah, I agree, I don't think we need to be goodwill, rather than giving
We'll
out.
send them to all our sites.
Those will charge you for it. No. I mean, that's. But let's see, we should see, we'll see how much we can, because I think we could be pretty cheap if you get a really big, because that's what we did for the CASG, we bought them.
I think Pfizer, I mean, they didn't pay for ours, but they made us get one of those, and we just went to Staples and grabbed like one, I don't know if it said copy or certified. It said one of those words. It didn't say certified copy like how you have.
Yeah.
And the lady just told us, you know, just sign and date. Now, the nurse coordinator hated it because, I mean, it was for everything that was entered in the system, all
Well,
sorts.
it's stapled, it's
Yeah.
so, you know.
Well, and what we did, we got permission from our regulatory people that we could, if you had, let's say you had a stack like this, you could actually just stamp the front page, sign a date, and say, this is one of 32 pages.
Okay.
And that way, if anything is, if they're 30, you know, if they're stapled together, and that, it makes me nervous though, but, because I still think I almost want every page stamped, but anyhow, figure out if you can do that. I mean, we could actually look into that again and see how that's set up.
But at least you could do labs on that given day, you know.
Yeah. They're all, Yep. I'm so glad you guys came.
We had it on our calendar. So I know with your honor that it was, you got some financial reward.
Oh, sure. Rich took me to dinner, took us all to dinner. I didn't just about supposed to like that.